but it was not seen visibly. I want you to see what is. Remember, if we fail to understand the science of true education, no part in the kingdom. We showed you why we need to understand money. Did we show you it's the highest education? Inspiration says to understand money as the highest form of education. Highest form. Now, and we saw that debt is a cankering evil. We have to get rid of it. Now, true education was found in Eden, but the promised land was a second Eden. That means what was in Eden? In the promised land. The system of what? True education. Watch this one. Now, obviously the quotation goes on. For the sake of time, I have to go on. It says here, the Lord assured him that they must dispose the land of those who are, the land of those who are a snare to them. What land is this? What land is this? Canaan land. And continues, who would be thorns in their side. This was the word of the Lord, and his plan was that under his guardianship, his people should have larger and still larger territory. Wherever they should build houses, number one, land. And cultivate the land, houses and land, yes. To build a house, you need a land, and then cultivated food. Business firms should be established that they would not have to borrow from their neighbors, but their neighbors from them. While we are speaking about debt this morning, does that have anything to do with true education coming out of debt? Before the crisis, yes. What is it that will cause us not to borrow, but people to borrow from us and take us out of debt? As that question, where does she say this was in where? In the promised land. Question, was the promised land a second Eden? Is that a part of true education? Yes. So what do we need then? We need to study how to have our own business. Own business. Are we following, friends? You need land? Says you need land. Actually, do you know that the book of Proverbs says that before you even worry about the house, you worry about the soil. Many people, when they look for land, look at the house. No. Proverbs teaches that when you look for the land, you look at the soil. Come with me to Proverbs. Just show us that. Come with me to Proverbs. Let me show you that. Go into the book of Proverbs. Proverbs, I want us to see Proverbs chapter 24. Proverbs chapter 24, 27. Proverbs 24, 27. Are we there? Proverbs 24, verse 27. Are we there, beloved? It says, Proverbs 24, 27, it says, prepare thy work without, and make it fit for thyself in the field, and afterwards build thine house. Amen. So the Bible is teaching me that when you look for the land, the main thing, friends, what do you need more importantly? Why you need that food? Can that house, if you build that house first, can that house feed you? No. God says you first prepare the field, then you prepare the house. In God's order, that's the order. Now, question, is it Bible to teach us to have our own businesses? Is that a part of true education? Now, I want you to see what it says. Education, the same. Now, I mentioned to you a book, Education. This is the book. Does our businesses or calling as a part of what? God's great plan. What? You see what I'm saying? That to have businesses is a part of what? God's great plan. And as long as it is conducted in accordance with his will, he himself is responsible for the results. Now watch this thing, friends. Question. When you need something, where do you go to get that thing? Babylon. If one of our own members would say, you know what? I'm just using this example. Where do you get your herbs from? That you drink, you mix those teas, herb shop. Someone says amongst us, I will plant all these herbs. Now we can't say that's your business, but I'm just saying, God convicts you and you say, okay, herbs. Then every one of us buys our herbs from them. Will that person have a business overnight? Amen. Someone else says, I'm going to make plant-based soap. And then everyone buys soap from them. Will that person have a business? Do you know why the Jews are one of the wealthiest people? Do you know that their money, we spoke about this in prayer meeting, their money at least bounces 3 times amongst themselves before it goes out. When a Jew breaks down, a Jew doesn't call a Gentile. A Jew calls a Jew. a Jew mechanic to come. When a Jew wants a suit, a Jew don't go buy from a Gentile. Why that Jew? He'll first hunt for a Jew and he buys his suit. Everything the Jews do, they do it, at least if they can't get it amongst themselves, then the money goes without them. We know a crisis is coming, friends. That's why God wants us to have our own businesses, where we can actually get whatever we need, not from Babylon, but from one another. One person will supply the needs that somebody else needs, and somebody else can supply the needs somebody else needs. Do you know that just amongst God's people, if this was taken... Now, I'm going to correct this. I should have corrected it first. This business is not for you to become rich. It's not for you. Actually, the purpose of the business, let's do this. Because I jumped to 3, let's go back to 1. Let me say this. In order for this phase 1 to work, you can't even talk about business as yet. If number 1 and 2 is wrong, I tell you, don't even consider business. Scratch business out immediately. Phase 1. You know what's phase 1? What is that? Number 1 is, there's no way you can have this business if step 1 is not done correctly. You need a relationship with Jesus. You know how that relationship must be? Job tells us that relationship must be so close between you and Jesus that not even air can come between you. You say, why is that? Let me say this. If that is your position with Jesus, that you and Jesus are so close that not even air can come between you all, that even should your business fail, God will send ravens. Do you know that word that fed Elijah, that word that fed those the children of Israel for 40 years, that same word will feed you when the crisis comes. Number 1 is you need a close personal relationship with Jesus. You need an intimate relationship with him. Job tells us this. And then step 2, as an individual, you need this relationship. And then step 2, I want you to see steps 2 in Isaiah. Come with me to the book of Isaiah. I want you to see what's step 2. Isaiah 38. Isaiah 38. Isaiah 38, are we there? I want us to see verse 1. Isaiah 38, verse 1. It says, in those days was Hezekiah sick unto death. And Isaiah the prophet, the son of Amos, came unto him and said unto him, thus saith the Lord, set thine house in order, for thou shalt die and not live. After, as individuals of the family, you actually come together, each person gets a relationship with Jesus. What's the next step? The next step is that everyone must do what? Every family must do what? Set their house in order. Set your house in order. Step 1 first, everyone in the family individually gets a relationship with God. Step 2 is, as the head of the home, as a father, if you're a father, maybe no father there, but mother, next step, set the house in order. Does anybody know how does a house that is in order looks like? Anybody? You read a book, Adventist Home, it tells you how does a house that is in order look like. Heaven on earth. Inspiration says that it's heaven. Now question, who lives in heaven? Are there beings that live in heaven? Yes. Angels. Now let me ask you this. What are angels called in the book of Hebrews 1, verse 13 and 14? They ministering spirits. They ministering spirits. So if your house is set in order and it looks like heaven, automatically that home now turns into a what? A ministry. What I mean is, your house, no one can tell me my house is heaven on earth and there's no ministry getting done by that family. Impossible. Because if it looks like heaven, that means it looks like how the angels are. The angels are constantly ministering. So if that house looks like heaven, that house must have a ministry. So number 1 is I get my own relationship with Jesus. Number 2, as the head of the home, I set my house in order. And when it's in order, there will be seen a ministry in that home. And when there's a ministry, the next step is to have not your own business, but a ministry business.